Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Last week, I made a podcast about shadowing, and many of you came forward to ask more questions about shadowing, what it looks like, and if you're doing it correctly. And I can see that there's a lot of confusion about this out there. So I'd like to talk more about shadowing today, just to dispel some of the myths about it. All right. So, first of all, let's begin with a few simple points, okay, about shadowing, what it is and what it isn't. So, first of all, shadowing is an exercise designed to help you speak better. Okay? Shadowing is an exercise designed to help you speak better. It's designed to help you look at and improve your sounds that you make. Okay? And it's done by imitating how someone speaks. That is shadowing. Now, if you bring your mind into that with vocabulary, transcripts, other things which may distract you from simply listening and hearing, then it gets really, really complex. So, again, shadowing is designed to improve how you speak. It is not an exercise to learn vocabulary. It is not an exercise to study grammar. And it's certainly not something that you should be reading about. Let's just maybe take the example of a child. Okay, so let's imagine a little boy who can't read or write because he's too young. I won't speculate on how old he is, okay, but let's just imagine it's a preschool child, okay? He can't read, he can't write, he listens to his parents, and he repeats what his parents say. He has no idea of meanings. He's just hearing sounds and making them, and from his father and mother, he learns his accent. That, in total, is what shadowing does for you. The meaning of certain words becomes clearer as you progress, perhaps because you study them, perhaps because you see signs, perhaps you encounter them somewhere else when you're old enough. That's all. Let's just divide learning into two parts for a moment. There's the part where a child listens to his parents and he just repeats and he gets the sounds right. And then when he starts school, there's the academic part where he studies, he learns to write, he learns new words. Okay, and both of these systems are not related at all. They are two completely different things. That is what you need to know when you're shadowing. Shadowing is only designed to help you speak better. It's done by studying sounds, sound by sound, not words by word. Now, of course, if you do have a good knowledge of English, you'll be hearing words you know. And there's a real danger there if you hear words that you know, that you'll simply repeat them in your usual voice. And that, of course, isn't shadowing, that's studying or remembering a word that you've heard before. if that is happening for you, you're not going to get very far because you're just repeating in your accent that you have already in English what you're hearing. You need to be breaking out of that and forcing yourself to really imitate the speaker. Now, when you really imitate the speaker, how you speak changes. And there's no point in doing that if you're just going to say something in the accent you already have. So if you're facing that situation, you really need to be choosing something much more difficult so that you can't recognize so many of the words just to repeat in your own accent. So again, shadowing is all about hearing and imitating sounds. It's not about hearing a word, saying a word, repeating a word in your own accents. The fact that you're deciding to shadow would suggest that your current accent is not one that you like. So repeating words in that current accent isn't going to help you at all. In fact, it's just going to reinforce the way you speak already. So it's about copying the speaker. Now, for those of you who've taken lessons with me, you know that there's a sound chart on Anti-Moon website, and you can easily find it just by putting into Google Anti-Moon sounds of English. You'll see two columns on there with consonants and vowels. Okay, it has little recordings on there for both American and British English. Most sounds are the same. Okay, there's just a handful that are different, and you'll see those on the chart. You can click on them and hear the sounds. It's the sound that you're trying to capture. Now, if shadowing is becoming such a big issue and you feel your English is perhaps too proficient in order to shadow effectively, then what I recommend you do is take one sound from that anti-moon chart and just study it every day or every week, and just be aware of every time you hear it and try to imitate it as part of your shadowing. So let me just show you what that looks like in practice. Okay, so if we say the boy jumps over the fence, okay, the boy jumps over the fence, you can hear that my O is very pronounced, okay? It's a real circular sound. O is formed by pulling my mouth down and creating O. It's not O, okay? And it's not O, it's O, O, okay? So just take a moment to realize how you pronounce that letter. What does it sound like? Does it sound like my O in over? Does it sound like O in over? What does it sound like? Okay, now you know. So there's something that you have to work on and improve. Every time you hear that letter O in BBC News, for example, then just remember to change the way you say it, going from O to O, for example. Okay? Now, different nationalities around the world, different accents, all struggle with different letters. Okay? So you might have to do a bit of work to try to capture some of these things. Let me just give you another example. I'm going to choose a consonant this time. Okay, so let's take the word work. Okay, now do you say work with a hard R? The way I'm saying it is with a soft R. In fact, my letter R sounds a lot like the letter R for apple, because the letter R is silent in a lot of words. You can hear there in the word, work, the letter R doesn't really feature. So I want you again just to take a moment to think about how you pronounce that. Okay. And now you can see there that you have something else that you have to improve upon. So this is really, really important that you spend some time just thinking about your different letters. Now, having said all of that, I'm kind of worried that you're going to go away and make this into an academic study, because the whole point of shadowing is to get away from academia. Do you remember we spoke earlier about academia being very different from the actual way a child learns just by hearing and repeating. So the way of shadowing is hearing and repeating. The more complex you make this by trying to read about it, by trying to find out about it, by looking for shadowing scripts and shadowing things, then the more difficult it becomes, because you're moving between two entirely different systems. The other thing I need to tell you about shadowing is you need to be very specific. We're living in a time of great globalization, where we're all affected by the way people speak. We don't really have a community setting anymore where everybody speaks the same way. If you go to a very small place in the countryside, you might still hear some kind of a similar accent amongst the people. But the truth of the matter is, because of diversity and immigration, one moment you're speaking to an English person, another moment you're speaking to perhaps an American. If you work for a multinational company, you may be hearing different accents. But with shadowing, you need to be very, very clear on the accent you're hearing. Because if you begin shadowing with, let's say, NPR in America, and then in the next moment, you begin shadowing with the BBC, and then in the next moment, you begin shadowing with, let's say, one of the Australian radio networks, your accent is going to be pulled in many different ways. So as much as you can, find a voice that you like and just shadow with it. Because the more you go around the world, the more confusing it's going to get for you, because we all pronounce our sounds a little bit differently. If you like my accent and you like these podcasts, just shadow with them. Repeat what I'm saying. But remember, you're imitating my sounds, not repeating my words. Okay? But find a presenter, somebody you like, and make that decision about how you want to sound like. Now, this might sound like a kind of an easy question with an easy answer. You might just say, oh, well, London, oh, well, America. But of course, even within those areas, you're going to get a lot of diversity, especially here in the UK. I mean, the people who read our news come from all over the world. So you need to be a little bit choosy about who you shadow with. Because remember, ultimately, that's how you're going to sound like, or who you're going to sound like. This isn't an easy question because really what I'm asking you here is who do you want to be in the English speaking world? If you want to sound like Jim Costa from CNN, I think that's his name, is it Jim Costa or Jim DeCosta? Or whether you want to sound like one of the BBC newscasters, there's a decision to be made there. And it's all about who you are and the kind of image that you want to give to the world. I would say don't think about it too much. Just make it a practical decision. You know, if you're living in the middle of New York right now, then just go with what's around you if that's where you're going to be staying. If you've once traveled to, let's say, Liverpool because you love the Beatles, begin to listen to BBC Radio Liverpool. Give yourself the gift of the accent of the people that you love, you know. For the purposes of learning, you need to choose one place to give yourself a solid base. After you have that accent, then of course you can change it or you can go whatever you want. But it's a question of identity and why you choose a particular place. So that's what I want you to focus in on today. And I really hope this podcast has made things clearer. So just to sum up a little bit, firstly, shadowing is not about repeating words, so no transcript is required. Secondly, if you do find yourself just simply repeating words, force yourself out of that habit because you should be repeating sounds in the way that the person who is speaking speaks. Thirdly, the question of identity. Who am I in the English world? Okay, so you really need to focus in on a place, find the media of that place and make it yours. This is you in the English speaking world. And to have an English speaking identity can really help you a lot. You know, many of you out there think that across the English speaking world we're all the same. I can assure you we're not. Even the food we eat is different, whether you're living in London, the north of Scotland, Australia, India. We all have very, very different cultures, and as a result, we all speak very differently. So get yourself in there, decide who you want to be, and work towards that. Don't be too hard on that, but make sure that 90% of what you're hearing is really of the place that you feel you want to be identified with. And remember, if shadowing just isn't working for you, or if you prefer to perhaps do it in a different way, then take the sound chart that I've told you about before, this anti-moon chart that you can easily find on Google, and simply use that as a base. Study the sounds of it and start to repeat those sounds one by one. Every time you hear a word, just listen to how it sounds, compare it to how you would say it. But again, doing that word by word is only good in the sense that you're taking the sounds from that word to analyze. Okay, so you don't really want to just be repeating like a parrot. He says, then you say. He says, then you say. Because that isn't going to change anything except just monotonous repetition. So it's all about imitation, changing the letters. If you have any questions about that, please get in touch with me. I'll be happy to help. But it's not difficult. It's just a habit and really picking up from a place of identity who you want to be. And that's it from me today. I hope you found this helpful. See you. Bye.